What's Up, Doc is the 18th episode of the 7th season of Cheers. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's definitely not one of my favourite episodes. I still enjoyed it, of course, and there are some really good moments, but in general, it's not a personal favourite. But nevertheless, I still have some thoughts and definitely some personal highlights that I'll talk about as we go through the episode. It starts off with Woody bringing a jar of jelly beans to the bar. Rebecca is hosting a contest where you guess the amount of jelly beans, you win a prize to go to Atlantic City. Woody kind of gives away how many jelly beans there are. It's a nice, fun way to start things off. With the rest of the episode, there is only one main narrative, which is often the case, and it works really well. Just because I don't love it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. And Sam actually starts off, as he often does, with hitting on Rebecca, and he gets a maybe. And Carla says that once upon a time, Sam Malone would have not settled for a maybe. And she says, "You're nothing but Clavin in a good shirt," which I quite enjoyed. And Sam declares, "The amazing Sammy will now make love to the very next woman who enters this bar." Carla tries to be that next woman, doesn't go according to her plan. In walks a woman. We don't know who she is immediately, but she is Dr. Sheila Rydell. She's played by Madolyn Smith Osborne, and Sam, of course, goes to start flirting with her. He says, "My name is Sam," and she says, "My name is being withheld for security reasons," which I rather loved. Turns out she was meeting Lilith and Frasier, and that's how we find out who she is. And when Lilith appears to be far away, Frasier happens to agree that unlike most of the women in his profession, she's actually very attractive. And Lilith hears Frasier, and Carla wonders if he'll be able to talk his way out of this one, and he says they'll go to Tiffany's on the way home, and Lilith's happy. I never really saw Lilith as a Tiffany's person, but I guess there are multiple sides to every person. And Cliff then asks Sam to talk to him in Cliff's office, which is his part of the bar where he's currently sitting. And he says to Sam, "If I were you, I'd approach good Dr. Legs there on a professional level. I would make an appointment with her and pretend there was something wrong with me." And I was waiting. I was waiting for Carla, who was standing right there, to make a joke about there being something wrong with Cliff. Nothing. She said nothing. She even agreed that it was a good idea, and then celebrates Clavin getting a new brain, which was good fun, but I'm just really surprised that she didn't take the bait there. And Carla thinks, yeah, this is a good idea, and she suggests that Sam tells Dr. Sheila Reed that he has impotence. Sam doesn't want to hear this. Absolutely not. But then the next thing we see is Sam going to her office and tries to tell her in not so many words that he is impotent, and she immediately says, "I have a colleague who specialises in this. He actually has a group session right now. All you have to do is join the group and say, 'I'm Sam Malone,'" and it's funny in the context. What I'm about to say that she said isn't acceptable, but she obviously knew what he was doing, and she said, "All you have to say is, 'I'm Sam Malone and I no longer function as a man.'" Obviously, no therapist would ever say that to somebody who's impotent, but obviously she knows what Sam is doing, and I think she was able to deduce very quickly that that is probably the single worst sentence Sam would ever want to say. And that's why I thought it worked really well. And Sam very quickly leaves the office. But she does agree to go on a date with him. And the next thing we see, Carla's heading out of the bar. Sam is there alone with Sheila. And he was a little worried that he would be spending the evening with her while she is trying to diagnose him. And he kind of got a bit annoyed that she hadn't done that and demanded a diagnosis. So she says, "Right, fine, if this is what you want." And she tells him that he has nothing in his life except sex. And I think it's pretty fair to say that post-Diane, that's very much the case, but I think there's also an absence of sex in Sam's life compared to pre-Diane. I feel like it's all-consuming, but a lot of it's more mental rather than physical. Again, compared with pre-Diane. That's very much how I assess Sam and his character development pre-Diane, with Diane, and post-Diane. And I feel like Sam regressed a lot to pre-Diane. He had a lot of personal growth with Diane, and part of him has regressed to his old ways. But he's getting older, so it's not exactly the way it was. And what I did like is that Sheila was still willing to go to bed with Sam, because she figured if he's that obsessed with sex, he must be good at it. And Sam had some interesting thoughts, because he asked her, "You're willing to go to bed with me, even though you don't respect me?" And she basically replied, "Isn't that what you do with women?" And I think that's so insightful. I thought that was so fascinating. And I think for Sam, probably a real eye-opening moment. And Sheila leaves and tells Sam that he can beep her anytime if he changes his mind about sex. And pre-Diane Sam would have just been so giddy with excitement at that thought. So I do think, even though in some ways he regressed to his old ways, we do have a lot of growth and maturity here, and I think he's a lot more conscious about what people think of him post-Diane, in some good ways, but also maybe not in some other ways. And Rebecca is about to leave, and he asks her if she thinks his life is empty and void of any meaning, to which she replies, yes. And then Rebecca realises he's not just being flippant, he's not just asking a random question, he's clearly troubled by this. And to her credit, she stays with him and tries to help him find things that's not related to sex and women. And initially it's a struggle, everything he seems to do. And I will say, I don't actually agree. For example, she said, "You love the bar," and he said it's a great way to meet women. Yes, on the one hand, but I don't think that's it. Because the bar also symbolises something very significant for him. And that's a post-baseball career achievement. And I think we could tie his running the bar, despite being an alcoholic and generally not giving into that temptation, as also a fantastic achievement, and something that Sam should really be proud of and really be happy with, because that's probably not going to be an easy thing. So the bar symbolises so much more, and I think that he can connect with the bar in so many different ways, not just because it's easier to meet women that way. So I don't think that he just loves the bar because of women, but clearly that's what he believes. And eventually they settle on the fact that he loves the Three Stooges, and it's got nothing to do with sex and women. And finally he has at least one thing in his life, and I rather like that we were able to come to at least. And I like the fact as well that it's quite light-hearted. Enjoying the Three Stooges is not the most serious thing in the world. And I think it was a nice way to just lift the mood a little bit. And we end with something that I actually don't understand. It's the whole pinching of the noses thing. I've never seen the Three Stooges. Well, that's a lie, because after I watched this episode, I went and watched a clip on YouTube of the Three Stooges with a lot of very gruesome nose crunching, and it was disgusting. So I'm assuming that's what that's referring to. But if anybody has any additional context to add there, please feel free to do so. But it was definitely a lighthearted way to end things. So as I said, it's not an all-time favourite episode. It absolutely isn't. But I still enjoyed it, and I always find that when we get character development with Sam, it's always quite downbeat. It's not necessarily depressing, but they're usually a little bit heavier. Whereas when other characters have character development or eye-opening moments, for example, the episode with Carla, where she realised she was going to be a grandmother, she suddenly realised she was getting older. I never felt, there were, of course, moments, there were scenes, but I never felt the episode was too heavy. Whereas this one feels a little bit heavier, and I don't know if that's just because it's so easy to have a strong emotional connection with Sam. And to see him facing these struggles and realising things about himself that he maybe doesn't want to realise, it's not the most pleasant experience. So maybe that's why whenever Sam has an episode where he's either learning about himself or facing some kind of development, they are just a little bit heavier. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it does mean that they're not necessarily always the funniest. But there are still some good moments. Personal highlights: Carla saying "you're nothing but Clavin in a good shirt," which honestly kind of slightly seems like a compliment to Cliff. Maybe, I don't know. And Frasier and Lilith's interactions I rather liked. And honestly, that's probably about it. In terms of moments that I thought, that's fantastic. But just the whole experience with Sam is obviously very well written and quite eye-opening for Sam. So, in general, What's Up Doc may not be my personal favourite, but there's enough interest there that I can still talk about it for 10 minutes. It's definitely not a bad episode of Cheers.